Rose was a simple, kind-hearted young nurse who had recently gotten a job at a city hospital. Coming from a poor background, she was grateful for the opportunity, even though the pay was meager and the other nurses often looked down on her. They bullied her, mocking her torn shoes and faded uniforms, but Rose didn't let it bother her. She was determined to work hard and prove herself. One rainy evening, an ambulance screeched into the hospital, carrying a man badly injured in a terrible car accident. His face was covered in blood, and his clothes were torn. A stranger who found him lying by the roadside brought him in. The man had no identification, and no one knew his name. The stranger handed the doctor a phone he picked up from the accident scene, saying this was lying beside him. I thought it might help identify him. The doctors rushed the unconscious man to the emergency room. After hours of battling to save his life, they stabilized him, but he remained in a coma. They moved him to the intensive care unit, where he lay silently, hooked to machines that kept him alive. The doctor decided to check the phone and called the last number dialed. A voice answered on the other end, cautious and cold. "Hello, who is this?" the voice asked. The doctor replied, "This is Dr. Ben from City Hospital. A man was brought in after a car accident, and he's in a coma. We found this phone beside him, and yours was the last number dialed. Can you identify him?" The man on the other end paused before saying, "I'm Tony, the manager. His name is Dave. I'll come over right away." A few hours later, Tony arrived, his face showing little emotion. He looked at Dave lying unconscious, his face bruised and pale. After a brief discussion with the doctor, Tony paid the hospital bills and left, muttering to himself, he probably won't make it anyway. After Tony's visit, no one else came to see Dave. Weeks turned into months, and still, Dave lay in a coma. Most of the nurses lost hope, whispering that he was a half-dead man. They would walk past his room without looking in, convinced he would never wake up. Rose, however, couldn't stand to see Dave neglected. She felt sorry for him, lying alone in a cold, empty room. Though the other nurses sneered at her, calling her foolish, Rose decided to take care of Dave. She would wipe his face gently, change his sheets, and even read stories to him, hoping that somehow he could hear her. One evening, as Rose was cleaning the room, Nurse Stella sneered, "Why waste your time on that half-dead man? He's never waking up. Just let him rot." Rose ignored her, gently adjusting Dave's pillow. She whispered softly, "You're going to be fine. I'm here with you." 6 months passed, and Dave was still in the coma. The hospital staff barely remembered his name, calling him the long-term patient. Rose remained the only one who cared. One day, while she was cleaning his hands, she spoke softly, "I don't know where your family is or why no one visits, but I won't leave you. You deserve kindness, just like everyone else." Unknown to everyone, Dave was a billionaire. His parents lived abroad, completely unaware of his condition, and Tony, his manager, never mentioned his boss's true identity. Tony believed Dave wouldn't survive, so he didn't bother telling anyone that Dave was the young, wealthy CEO of a big company. Rose didn't know any of this. To her, he was just a man who needed someone to care for him. She would bring flowers to his room, telling him stories about her childhood and how she always dreamed of being a nurse. One day, while Rose was humming softly as she cleaned, she didn't notice that Tony had returned to the hospital to check on the situation. He saw Rose sitting beside Dave, talking to him as if he could hear her. A look of disdain crossed Tony's face. "Why are you wasting your time on him?" Tony asked, startling Rose. "He's a human being," Rose replied firmly. "Even if he can't speak or move, he deserves someone to care for him." Tony scoffed and walked away, thinking to himself that Rose was foolish. Little did he know that Dave's fingers twitched ever so slightly, a sign of life that Rose didn't notice. Despite the nurses' continued mockery and the doctor's dismissive attitudes, Rose never stopped caring for Dave. She would bring homemade soup, hoping the aroma would trigger a memory. She cleaned his room with extra care, making sure it smelled fresh and pleasant. Sometimes, when she was alone with Dave, Rose would whisper her own fears and dreams, not realizing that she was the only one keeping his spirit alive. One evening, she fell asleep beside his bed, exhausted from a long shift. Unbeknownst to her, a single tear slid down Dave's cheek, as if his soul recognized the kindness of the only person who hadn't given up on him. As the months dragged on, Rose remained by Dave's side, never giving up hope. She believed that someday he would wake up and see that he was not alone. The other nurses continued to laugh at her, calling her the nurse of the dead, but Rose never let their words crush her spirit. Dave remained in a coma, but somewhere deep inside, he could feel Rose's presence, her gentle touch, and her kind words. Unknown to everyone, his soul was fighting to return, drawn to the warmth and care that Rose selflessly gave. Days turned into weeks, and weeks into months. Dave remained in a deep coma, his life dependent on the machines around him. Rose continued to care for him, unfazed by the mockery from her fellow nurses. Despite their taunts, she believed that one day, Dave would wake up and be grateful for her kindness. Meanwhile, life outside the hospital was moving on without Dave. His company, a thriving business empire that Dave had built from the ground up, was starting to feel the impact of his absence. The employees whispered among themselves, wondering why the CEO hadn't been seen in months. Tony, the manager, was quick to seize the opportunity. Greedy and power-hungry, he spread the rumor that Dave had traveled abroad for a long business deal, leaving him in charge. To maintain his cover, Tony forged some documents and transferred significant sums of money from the company accounts into his personal ones. Who's going to notice? He thought. The boss isn't coming back. No one survives a coma for this long. Tony became more confident each passing day, throwing luxurious parties and driving new flashy cars. He even began boasting about how he would take over the company soon. Employees noticed the change in his lifestyle, but none dared to question him. Back at the hospital, Rose was unaware of the corporate drama unfolding. She remained dedicated to her daily routine, cleaning Dave's room, talking to him, and hoping that her presence would somehow reach him. Sometimes, Rose would gently touch his hand and whisper, "You have to wake up, Dave. There's a whole world waiting for you." In Dave's mind, though still in a coma, he felt like he was trapped in a dark, endless tunnel. He could hear faint voices, and sometimes he thought he could hear Rose singing softly to him. It was like a tiny light in the darkness, and it gave him a strange sense of peace. One evening, as Rose was cleaning his face, she noticed something odd, a single tear rolling down his cheek. Her heart skipped a beat. "Dave, can you hear me?" she whispered, wiping the tear away. She took his hand gently, squeezing it. "You're not alone. I'm here." But there was no other movement. Rose sighed and continued her work, not knowing that deep inside, Dave's soul was fighting to return to the surface. Back at the company, things were getting out of hand. Tony had siphoned off so much money that some employees started questioning the lack of funding for projects. One brave accountant, Mr. Johnson, approached Tony with the company's financial report. "So, I noticed some irregularities in the accounts. The funds for the new project seemed to be missing," Mr. Johnson pointed out. Tony glared at him. "Are you questioning my management? You know the boss left me in charge, right?" Mr. Johnson hesitated. "I just thought it was important to bring to your attention." Tony smirked. "Mind your business. If you value your job, don't stick your nose where it doesn't belong." That night, Tony destroyed several important documents, erasing evidence of his theft. He knew he had to act fast before anyone else became suspicious. In his mind, as long as Dave remained in a coma, he was in control. One night, while Rose was cleaning Dave's hands and humming a soft tune, Dr. Ben walked in, looking worried. "Rose, have you noticed any changes?" he asked. Rose hesitated. "Well, the other day, I saw a tear on his cheek. I don't know if it means anything." The doctor shook his head. "Sometimes it's just a reflex. It's been almost 8 months now. Most patients don't survive this long in a coma. I just hope he doesn't become a vegetable." Rose didn't like the sound of that. "Doctor, I believe he can hear me. Sometimes when I talk to him, I feel like he's trying to respond." Dr. Ben gave her a sympathetic smile. "You have a good heart, Rose. I just don't want you to get your hopes up too much." After the doctor left, Rose sat beside Dave, holding his hand. "Don't listen to them," she whispered. "You're stronger than they think. I know you'll wake up one day." In his dark world, Dave could feel a faint warmth in his hand, like a tiny spark of hope. He wanted to move, to open his eyes, but his body felt like it was weighed down by stones. Back at the company, Tony was now plotting his final move. He planned to announce that Dave had permanently moved abroad and would not be returning. That way, he could officially take over as CEO without any questions. One evening, when Tony was at his office going through Dave's files, he received a call from the hospital. "Hello, this is Dr. Ben. I'm calling to inform you about Dave's condition." Tony stiffened. "Did he wake up?" "No, he's still in a coma," Dr. Ben replied. "We just need you to sign some documents for his continued care." Tony sighed in relief. "I'll come by tomorrow." After hanging up, Tony muttered to himself, "As long as that fool stays in a coma, my plan will work." The next day, Tony visited the hospital briefly, avoiding Dave's room and signing the papers at the reception. Rose noticed him from a distance and wondered why he never checked on Dave. She couldn't understand how someone could be so indifferent to a friend's condition. As Tony left, Rose whispered to Dave, "Your manager was here, but he didn't come to see you. I wonder why. I'll stay with you. You don't have to be alone." In the deep recesses of his mind, Dave heard Rose's voice. It was like a soft echo that gave him the strength to keep fighting, even though his body remained still. While Tony's greed grew stronger, Rose's hope remained unshaken. She continued to care for Dave, never once abandoning him, while Tony schemed to take everything Dave had worked for. Rose continued her daily routine of caring for Dave, just as she had for the past 8 months. She wiped his face gently, changed his sheets, and whispered words of encouragement. One evening, while adjusting his pillow, she felt something unusual, a faint pressure on her hand. Startled, Rose looked down to see Dave's fingers twitching. Her heart pounded. She thought she was imagining it. Slowly, she leaned closer, whispering, "Dave, can you hear me?" To her surprise, his eyelids fluttered slightly. Rose gasped, almost dropping the cloth she was holding. "Dave, are you waking up?" With great effort, Dave's eyes opened just a little, his gaze unfocused. A low, raspy sound came from his throat, like he was trying to speak. Tears filled Rose's eyes as she whispered, "You're awake. You made it." Dave's lips moved weakly, barely forming words. "Where am I?" "You're in the hospital. You had an accident. You've been in a coma for a long time," Rose explained softly, trying to control her emotions. Dave's brows furrowed, and he tried to lift his hand. Rose gently placed it back on the bed. "Don't move too much. You're still very weak." She quickly called Dr. Ben, who rushed in, shocked to see Dave awake. He checked Dave's vitals, muttering to himself, "This is a miracle." After 8 months. As Dave drifted back into a light sleep, Dr. Ben turned to Rose, looking amazed. "You did it, Rose. Your dedication must have kept his spirit alive. I thought he would never wake up." Rose couldn't hold back her tears of joy. "I knew he would wake up. I just knew it." As Dave became more conscious, he looked around the room, his mind still foggy. Rose sat beside him, holding his hand. "Do you remember anything?" she asked gently. Dave blinked, his voice barely audible. "Just darkness and your voice." Rose smiled. "You've been in a coma for 8 months. I was the one who took care of you. No one else really bothered, except your manager, Tony, but he didn't visit you after the first day." Dave's tired eyes looked at her, confused. "Tony, he didn't visit." Rose hesitated. "He paid the bills that first day and left. I saw him a few times afterward, but he never came to your room. He acted like you didn't matter." Dave's mind struggled to process the information. Why didn't he care? Rose shrugged, not wanting to upset him. "I don't know. Maybe he thought you wouldn't survive. But I never gave up on you." Dave's eyes softened. "Thank you for being here." Rose smiled warmly. "You're welcome. I knew you were strong enough to fight." Suddenly, a thought crossed Dave's mind. "Does anyone else know I'm awake?" Rose shook her head. "No, just me and Dr. Ben. He hasn't told anyone yet." Dave took a shaky breath. "Good. Don't tell anyone, especially Tony. I need to find out what's going on first." Rose looked puzzled. "Why hide it?" Dave looked at the ceiling, gathering his thoughts. If Tony didn't care if I lived or died, something isn't right. I need to know what he's been up to all this time. Rose nodded, sensing that Dave was right. I'll keep it a secret. No one will know you're awake. Dave gave a weak smile. You're a good person, Rose. Just then, Nurse Stella peeked in, pretending to check on Dave. She almost dropped her clipboard when she saw his eyes open. Oh my God, he's awake. Rose quickly placed a finger to her lips, signaling Stella to be quiet. Stella nodded, still in shock, and backed out of the room, too stunned to speak. Rose sighed. We have to be careful. If word gets out, Tony will know. Dave slowly nodded. Please, help me keep this quiet. I don't trust anyone but you. Rose promised to protect his secret. She continued her routine of caring for him while pretending that nothing had changed. Whenever other nurses passed by, she acted as if Dave was still unconscious, keeping the truth hidden. As the days went on, Dave's strength slowly returned. Rose would bring him homemade soup, whispering updates about the hospital and the people who had given up on him. Dave listened quietly, a growing fire of determination in his heart. One evening, as Rose was helping him sit up, Dave whispered, I need to know what Tony has done with my company. Can you find out for me? Rose thought for a moment. I'll try to get some information. But you need to rest. You're still too weak to deal with stress. Dave smiled faintly. I trust you. You're the only one who believed in me. Rose felt her heart swell with pride. I'll do my best. Just focus on getting better. As night fell, Rose sat beside Dave, humming softly, while Dave closed his eyes, grateful that he wasn't alone in his fight. He knew that uncovering Tony's betrayal wouldn't be easy, but with Rose by his side, he felt stronger. In the shadows, danger was brewing, and Dave knew that keeping his awakening a secret was the only way to protect himself and expose the truth. 2 weeks passed, and Dave was slowly regaining his strength. Rose remained his secret keeper, making sure that no one in the hospital, especially Tony, knew that Dave was awake. She would sneak in meals from home, feed him carefully, and help him sit up for a few minutes every day. One afternoon, Dave whispered to Rose, I feel a bit stronger today. Can you help me sit up for longer? Rose smiled warmly, adjusting the pillows behind him. Of course. You're doing great, Dave. As Dave sat upright, he looked at his thin arms and sighed. I used to be stronger. What has happened to me? Rose gently placed her hand on his shoulder. You've been lying down for 8 months. Your muscles became weak. But don't worry, you'll regain your strength. Dave gave her a small, grateful smile. I couldn't have done this without you. Rose chuckled. I'm just glad you're alive. I almost gave up hope a few times, but something kept telling me you'd make it. Dave lowered his gaze, his mind troubled. If you didn't give up on me, why did everyone else? Even Tony, he just left me to die. Rose bit her lip. I don't understand it either. I've seen him a few times at the hospital, but he never checked on you. I thought he was supposed to be your friend. Dave's face darkened. Something isn't right. I need to get out of here and see what's going on with my company. But you're still weak, Rose warned. If you rush things, you might collapse. Dave sighed. You're right. I need to be stronger before facing anyone. But I can't sit here doing nothing. Can you get me a newspaper? I want to see what's been happening in the world. Rose nodded. I'll get one tomorrow. The next day, she sneaked a newspaper into Dave's room. Dave carefully unfolded it, his eyes scanning the business section. His heart sank when he saw the headline, Successful Expansion Under New Management. Tony leads the way. Dave's hands trembled. He's taking credit for my projects. This was my plan. I started it before the accident. Rose looked worried. Is he trying to take over your company? Dave clenched his jaw. It looks that way. If I don't act soon, I might lose everything. One evening, Dr. Ben entered Dave's room for a routine checkup. He was surprised to see Dave sitting up, looking more alert. Well, you're recovering faster than expected, Dr. Ben said with a smile. Thanks to Rose. Days passed, and with Rose's care, Dave grew stronger. He could now sit up on his own, his voice still weak but clearer than before. Rose kept his recovery a secret, but rumors started to spread among the nurses. Some claimed that Rose was making up stories about Dave waking up, while others peeked into his room, only to see him lying still, eyes closed. Rose had warned Dave to pretend whenever anyone entered. One morning, Dr. Ben entered the room, surprised to find Toby sitting up, trying to eat soup with Rose's help. "Wow, you're recovering fast," Dr. Ben said, his eyes wide with amazement. Dave gave a faint smile. "Thanks to Rose. She never gave up on me." The doctor glanced at Rose, nodding. "You're truly a blessing, Rose. We thought he wouldn't make it." Rose blushed. "I just couldn't leave him alone. I knew he had the strength to wake up." Dr. Ben examined Dave thoroughly, noticing how his vitals had improved significantly. "If you keep progressing like this, you might be able to leave the hospital soon." Dave looked at Rose, his eyes filled with gratitude. "That sounds good, but I still don't want anyone else to know." Dr. Ben frowned. "Why not?" Dave's jaw tightened. "Because I don't trust the people around me, especially my manager, Tony." The doctor raised an eyebrow, but Rose quickly stepped in. "It's better if we keep his recovery a secret for now, just until he's fully stable." Dr. Ben agreed. "All right, but we'll need to start discharge procedures soon. He can't stay here forever." That evening, Rose sat with Dave, discussing the next steps. "If you get discharged, where will you go?" Rose asked. Dave sighed. "I can't go back to my house. Tony might be watching it. I need a place where no one would think to look." Rose hesitated. I have a small room at my place. It's not much, but you can stay until you figure things out." Dave smiled warmly. "You've already done so much for me, Rose. I don't want to be a burden." Rose shook her head. "You're not a burden. You need help, and I'm willing to give it. You deserve to be safe." The next day, Dr. Ben finalized the discharge papers. He agreed to keep the details confidential, marking Dave's status as still in coma to avoid raising suspicions. Rose carefully helped Dave into a wheelchair, draping a light blanket over him to disguise his identity. As they moved through the hospital corridor, Nurse Stella caught sight of them and hurried over. "Where are you taking him?" she asked suspiciously. Rose smiled calmly. "He's being transferred to a long-term care facility. Doctor's orders." Stella looked skeptical but didn't question further. Once outside, Rose helped Dave into a taxi, giving the driver directions to her neighborhood. During the ride, Dave stared out the window, his heart heavy with worry. "What if everything I built is gone?" he whispered. Rose placed a comforting hand on his shoulder. "We'll find out the truth. You're not alone." They arrived at Rose's modest one-room apartment. It was simple but neat, with a small bed, a wooden table, and a tiny kitchen space. Rose helped Dave to the bed, fluffing the pillow behind him. "I know it's not much," Rose said apologetically. Dave smiled weakly. "It's perfect, better than that lonely hospital room." Over the next few days, Rose took care of Dave, cooking simple meals and helping him practice walking. One evening, while Rose was preparing dinner, Dave glanced at the small radio on the table. "Can we listen to the news?" he asked. Rose nodded and turned it on. A familiar voice echoed through the room. In other news, Dave Industries has been struggling since the sudden departure of its CEO. Acting manager, Mr. Tony, announced today that he has taken full control of the company, citing Dave's indefinite leave. Dave's eyes widened. "That snake. His taking over." Rose frowned. "I knew something wasn't right. You need to regain your strength and confront him." Dave clenched his fists, his voice trembling. "He's probably stolen so much by now. I trusted him, and he betrayed me." Rose sat beside him. "You'll get your company back. We just have to plan carefully. If he knows you're alive and well, he might do something desperate." Dave took a deep breath. "You're right. We need proof of what he's done. I can't just walk in there without evidence." Rose thought for a moment. "Maybe we can find someone inside the company who's still loyal to you. Someone who can help us without alerting Tony." Dave nodded slowly. "There's one person I can think of, Johnson, the accountant. He's always been honest and straightforward. If anyone noticed the theft, it would be him." Rose smiled. Then that's our first step. I'll go to the company and see if I can talk to him. Dave looked worried. It might be risky. Tony could recognize you. Rose gave him a reassuring smile. I'll be careful. You just focus on recovering. The next morning, Rose dressed in simple clothes and headed to the company building. As she approached the entrance, she noticed expensive cars lined up outside, and Tony giving orders to some staff. She ducked into a nearby alley, waiting for the right moment to slip inside unnoticed. Once inside, Rose found Johnson in the finance department. He looked stressed and tired, going through stacks of documents. Mr. Johnson, Rose whispered, pulling him aside. He looked at her in confusion. Who are you? I'm a nurse from the hospital. I took care of Dave. He's alive. Johnson's eyes widened. Alive? But everyone thought he was gone. Listen, Rose whispered urgently. We need your help. Tony's trying to take over the company, but Dave is recovering. Can you find proof that Tony's been stealing? Johnson glanced around nervously. I suspected something was wrong. The accounts aren't adding up. I'll look into it, but we have to be careful. Rose nodded. Please. Dave is counting on you. Back at Rose's apartment, Dave anxiously waited. When Rose returned and shared the news, he felt a flicker of hope. Johnson will find the evidence, Rose assured him. We just need to stay quiet and let him do his part. Dave looked at her with deep gratitude. I don't know how to repay you, Rose. You saved my life, and now you're helping me get my life back. Rose smiled, her eyes shining with determination. You don't owe me anything. I just want to see you happy again. Dave's heart warmed at her words. For the first time in a long while, he felt safe and hopeful. As he continued to regain his strength, he knew that with Rose by his side, he had a fighting chance to reclaim everything he lost. Weeks passed, and Dave's recovery continued steadily. Thanks to Rose's care and support, he was now able to walk with minimal assistance. The light returned to his eyes, and his determination to reclaim his life grew stronger each day. One evening, Rose came home with a small envelope in her hand. Johnson managed to get the documents, she whispered excitedly. Dave opened the envelope, his hands shaking slightly. Inside were copies of financial reports, bank statements, and emails proving that Tony had been stealing money and using Dave's assets for personal gain. He's been draining the company dry, Dave muttered, anger simmering in his eyes. He was counting on me, never waking up. Rose placed a comforting hand on his shoulder. Now you have proof. What are you going to do? Dave thought for a moment. I'm going to show up at the company unexpectedly. I want to see Tony's face when he realizes his plan has failed. The next morning, dressed in a simple suit that Rose had bought for him, Dave made his way to his company. Rose stayed by his side, determined to support him until the end. As they arrived, the staff was shocked to see Dave walk through the entrance. Some whispered, "Is that really him? I thought he was gone." Dave walked straight to the boardroom where a meeting was taking place. Tony was in the middle of presenting a new plan for the company's expansion when Dave pushed open the doors. Silence fell as everyone stared, wide-eyed and stunned. Tony turned pale, dropping his papers. Dave, he stammered, his voice trembling. Dave gave a cold, steady gaze. Surprised to see me, Tony. Tony's hands shook. I thought you were gone. Dave stepped closer. You mean you hoped I was gone? I know everything, Tony. I know how you stole from my company while I was lying unconscious, fighting for my life. Tony's face flushed red. It's not what it looks like. Dave held up the evidence. These documents say otherwise. You betrayed me when I needed you the most. The board members looked at Tony in disgust. One of them, Mr. Joe, shook his head. How could you do this to Dave, after all he's done for you? Tony stuttered, trying to make excuses, but no one listened. Security was called, and Tony was escorted out of the building and was arrested. The staff cheered, grateful that their true boss was back. After addressing the staff and assuring them that the company was now safe, Dave turned to Rose, who was standing at the doorway, her eyes filled with pride. Later that evening, Dave took Rose to his mansion. You saved my life, Rose, Dave began, his voice soft. Not just from death, but from losing everything I worked for. I can never repay you." Rose smiled warmly. "You don't owe me anything. I just did what was right." Dave looked at her with tenderness. "You were the only one who believed in me. You were my light in the darkest time. I don't just owe you my life, I owe you my heart." Rose's cheeks flushed as Dave took her hands gently. "Rose, will you marry me?" he whispered. Tears filled Rose's eyes as she nodded. "Yes, yes, I will." Dave pulled her into a gentle hug, his heart finally at peace. They knew that their love had grown through trials and hardship, and now they could finally be happy. Months later, the hospital was buzzing with the news. No, Stella and the others couldn't believe their ears when they heard that Dave, the half-dead man, was not only alive but also the billionaire CEO. And to top it all off, he had married Rose, the pawn nurse they mocked. One day, Rose returned to the hospital to collect some papers, now dressed in a beautiful, simple gown and looking radiant. Stella approached her, guilt written all over her face. "Rose, I'm so sorry. We were wrong to treat you that way," Stella stammered. Rose gave her a forgiving smile. "It's okay. Sometimes people only see what they want to see." As Rose left, Stella whispered to another nurse, "I can't believe it. We bullied her, and she ended up marrying a billionaire." Another nurse sighed. "We should have been kinder. She truly deserved happiness." Back at their new mansion, Dave and Rose enjoyed their simple moments together, grateful for how love and kindness had triumphed over betrayal and greed. Dave never forgot how Rose's unwavering faith pulled him from the darkness, and how her love restored his life. And Rose knew that her decision to care for Dave, despite what everyone said, had changed her life forever. They both learned that kindness, loyalty, and love could overcome even the darkest of days. Together, they built a new life, one filled with love, laughter, and the beautiful promise of never giving up on each other. The end.